When a loved one with dementia calls dozens of times a day, missing a call can trigger a heavy wave of caregiver guilt. But what if technology could step into those gaps, not to replace your presence, but to protect your emotional bandwidth when you physically cannot answer? Today, I'm sitting down with Kirsten Thomas, founder of KindredMind, to explore how an AI voice companion grounded in validation therapy can help family caregivers reclaim their peace of mind. Welcome back. I'm Jen Fink, and this is Dementia Decoded. We're taking the confusion out of the caregiving journey by turning the light on for the path ahead. It's about more than memories, it's about strategy, clarity, and heart. So let's get into today's episode. Here we go. If you are caring for a loved one with dementia, you know the sound of a phone ringing isn't just a phone call, it's a wave of anxiety. It's the call you missed while you were in a work meeting, the shower, or putting the kids to bed. Today, we are welcoming Kirsten Thomas, founder of KindredMind. Kirsten built KindredMind not as a tech founder, but as a daughter navigating her own mother's frontotemporal dementia. KindredMind is an AI voice companion that steps into those repetition, high anxiety moments to answer calls in your familiar voice, and now even reaches out with warm check-ins. Kirsten, welcome to Dementia Decoded.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for inviting me.
So thank you. So give us a little bit about your background and why you were the person to create this platform that I really wish I had had 10 years ago.
I hear that a lot. I guess what I'll say first is just kind of give a little context and background on my mom and who she is. She raised me as a single mom. I'm an only child. So inherently, there's a very strong connection. Some might argue codependent. My dad never paid for child support. So every opportunity I had, university, travel, all the privileges were all because of her grit and her work ethic, her belief in herself. She was a powerhouse in a suit with shoulder pads, I like to say, doing them back in the 80s and early 90s. That was my mom. And I think because of our close connection, I've always been really wired to worry about her. And so I became kind of like hyper alert or sensitive to her cognitive decline over, I would say, the last 10 years, when I really think back. There were subtle signs. I saw patterns. People with dementia often substitute words or even sometimes make up words. And I started seeing that pattern called paraphasia in my mom. The disease actually disrupts the part of the brain for retrieving the right words. And so she would say, for example, yoga instead of tofu, or even say her cat's name wrong, like Zat instead of Zach. So it was really subtle and I could have missed it, but because of my it's now multi-generational. I saw this in my grandmother, specifically with the repetitive phone calls. That's my mom stopped texting me. That was another clue. She stopped texting and started calling with more frequency with the same question. So I think that poised me for problem solving, this repetitive reassurance, separation anxiety that we see with people living with dementia. So given my background, tech, entrepreneurial, it was kind of like well suited to explore what I could do there.
So I don't even think we had this option. I know we didn't have this option 10 years ago. My dad was diabetic. He had a kidney transplant, yes, in 2009. And in 2016, he was starting to make comments about, well, you need to plan for the end. And me being a planner and being very much like him, I just kind of assumed he meant, like we got to start thinking about it, blah, blah, blah. I did not realize that he literally meant that literally. I was healing from crashing on my bike. So I had a broken collarbone. So I missed some of the clues, but I do think they were really easy to miss. And trust me, he had a lot of like they needed to clean out like their garage. There was a lot of stuff to prepare for preparing for the end. And in November of 2016, we went to visit both my parents, put up some Christmas decorations for my mom. It was like the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And my dad was a disaster. He thought it was 1998. I did not realize what was going on. I knew he did not want to go back on dialysis, but had I understood what he was experiencing, then I would never have taken him to the hospital, which I think a lot of people would have appreciated, because while he was in the hospital, confused about what date, year, etc. it was, he called me constantly. And it was almost painful, because you would, I would answer the phone. He would be very confused about what's going on. He's always concerned about his car, which I thought was really interesting. And we had a family business together that they had retired from in 2005. So 11 years previous, almost 12. And he was asking, like, who's watching the shop, who's taking it? And it was like, yikes, and it literally was like every 5 minutes. And I deleted all of those messages. My sister kept them, but I found it so incredibly draining and just painful. Like, I couldn't help him, but I never experienced that with my mom. So it was kind of interesting. My sister wanted to put a phone in mom's room when she went to memory care. And I'm like, you handle that. You deal with the phone you go for it, honey.
That's on you.
Yeah. I was like, I am not going to be the architect of my own torture. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do if she did it. And thankfully she did not. So, so how could, well, let me back up. So when a lot of people hear, an AI voice command, like, oh my goodness, I can talk today. When they hear AI voice companion for someone with dementia, a lot of people are going to have a knee-jerk reaction, asking if it's fake or replacing human connection. How can KindredMind actually enhance the connection and give family caregivers back some of the emotional bandwidth rather than replacing them? So this would have been a perfect tool for the scenario I just mentioned with my dad.
Right. I'm gonna kind of try and answer that question from both the AI kind of dialogue, because it's very polarized and controversial sometimes, but also to your point, how it enables some reprieve for the caregiver itself. I'll say that the skepticism is natural. I get it. I wrestled with AI, care tech, all of that myself. The calls KindredMind picks up aren't calls I don't want to take, and I want that to be like very clear. It's the calls that I physically, literally can't get to. I'm built to try and do it all and do the best I can. And because I'm an only child, it all falls on me. So I felt that responsibility to field all of those calls, but it's just literally not physically possible or sustainable. So the fifth call of the morning, for example, ringing through a meeting, or the call, I always cite this as an example during my daughter's recital, and I'm having to decide, do I take my mother's call, or do I watch my daughter on stage and let my mom sit in fear? So it was those conundrums for me. But right now, the alternative to those calls isn't me warmly. It's actually just silence or voicemail or a version of me that's, hurried and rushed and maybe impatient sounding. KindredMind doesn't get between me and my mom. It sits in the gap where right now there's nothing. So KindredMind isn't designed, and I always say this, to replace. It's there to amplify my voice. It doesn't reduce how much I show up. I still visit her almost every single day. But it changes what happens in the minutes I genuinely can't get to that call. So, and every call that I do miss is summarized for me. It's like a Cole's Notes version, where I get her affect, I get her mood, a little transcript, a summary of what I may have missed so that I can follow up if need be. So I'm never really disconnected. I'm always in the know. And yes, she is hearing a voice that does sound like me, and doesn't know the difference. And I'm not dodging that, but the honest alternative isn't her understanding that she's talking to a voice companion, to AI, and make a formed decision on that. Her brain wouldn't be able to retain that knowledge even if I was fully transparent. The real alternative is this is what I looked for when I was building KindredMind is, send to voicemail, call silence, call block. Some people remove, as you said, the phone entirely, which actually removes their lifeline to that trusted family voice. And some people choose to medicate their loved ones, and there's no judgment. Everyone does what they need to do. These options, these alternatives didn't work for me because I knew I could figure out another solution, and that being having her calls answered in a warm voice that is mine, and meeting that need. So I'm not managing the behavior of like this perpetual repetitive reassurance calling. But really there's probably underlying, if you peel back the onion layers, some kind of fear or agitation or disorientation or concern, all of those like scary worry feelings. So at least she's hearing my voice and she feels more calm. The calls come with less urgency. So it's that familiar voice, and people aren't being talked into this. They're actually already reaching, I'm finding, for care tech, be it KindredMind, or there's lots of other products out on the market. I love citing stats. 66% of older adults say that tech actually enriches their lives and helps them age in place. Even older adults, 80 plus, shockingly go from 39 to 46% agree that tech supports healthy aging. And that leap occurred in a 1-year time frame.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And almost over half, so 55% of the 63 million caregivers in the States already use some sort of technology to coordinate care, to, here for, fall distress, all of those features that you can build in through tech. So it's becoming something that's more mainstream. It's becoming like something people are adopting for convenience, for safety, for all of those reasons. So I think we're starting to shift our perspective a little bit with introducing technology and human care. So I just want to make one final message very clear. It's not about replacing human connection, but it does have a benefit in that it does, to your point, provide a bit of a reprieve, a bit of a moment to get your work day done without the constant disruption.
I would think that would really help reduce caregiver guilt. You see those missed calls and you think, oh gosh, I'm failing my mom. I'm not doing everything I can do.
Yeah, I know that all too well. It's heavy. And actually it was those calls I missed that weighed on me more than just fielding, the 10th call that morning. So it was the one that I missed. I'm like, what if there was actually that one call that I missed? What if there was actually something serious? So one other nice feature with KindredMind is that we have built-in distress keywords. So if I have it set to cover for me, like in the event right now that I'm having a conversation with you, and if a word like fight or fire or any of those, distress words will actually break my cover for me mode and alert me in real time.
I think that's the really cool thing. It doesn't block it permanently.
No.
I facilitate a support group, and one of my members deals with a lot of these phone calls. She's not working, but does have a life. And after a certain amount of calls, repetitive calls, she just blocks the number. And then after whatever time, for time frame she feels is acceptable, then she unblocks it. So she would not get that alert of there is actually something that needs your attention. So I think that's something that technology has given us recently that we didn't, certainly didn't have in 2016. So.
No, it's very new. Yeah. One other thing, you can set a calendar schedule to your point about blocking windows. So you can automatically have it, okay, my work day is from, a set number of hours, and that's my block of time where I am focused on work, and all the calls will go directly to the voice clone.
No, that's actually, I like to be efficient. That sounds like something I would totally use. So we're kind of touching on it a little bit, but one of the most exhausting daily reality checks for caregivers is answering those same questions 20 times in an hour. How does a voice companion step into those high repetition moments to create like a soothing patient environment for the person with dementia while giving you a much needed break?
Yeah, that's a good question because people hear, she's called you 10 times before lunch and they might just think, oh, that's just like a minor annoyance or inconvenience. But it's actually, well, for me, I can speak personally, a full body interruption throughout the day. It got into my nervous system. Every ring made me literally jump out of my skin. And eventually it wasn't just the phone, and I've cited this too, like I could hear a crinkling of a candy wrapper and it would kind of startle me. So my body had learned to brace for crisis. So it's not just the questions themselves that are the hard part. It's that every call can be the exact same conversation, same question, same fear, same reassurance that you're offering, meant just as fully the 10th time that she's asked as the first time. So you have to answer the same way, because if you are answering with that frustrated tone, it's the first time she thinks she's hearing that. And she can pick up on that more so than just the words themselves. That's what asks of you, not the patience with her, but it's the stamina to keep showing up with your whole heart and on a loop, saying the same thing, hearing the same thing, fielding the same concern. So it isn't just hard, it's actually documented driver of burnout, and burnout documented driver for placement. So they say that older children, if they're fielding these, repetitive reassurance and separation anxiety natured phone calls over and over, it'll drive them to place them in long-term care. Research on dementia caregivers found repetitive questions were among the strongest predictor for that. Not how their parent is actually doing medically, clinically, all of that. It was their own burnout that would predict nursing home entry over time. So yeah, I mean, relieving some of that burnout with a companion that can answer those calls when you're in a meeting, when you're on a dinner date, or when your daughter is on stage, can change that trajectory, or at least remove one reason it happens sooner, that being placing the loved one living with dementia into care.
I've never heard that statistic, but
Yeah.
I believe it because I lived it with my dad. Every time he called, like I literally had the same physical reaction. It was just like, oh my God, I don't know what I do. I can't deal with this. I have other things. It was just, oh my gosh. It was like, seriously, like answer the phone or flight kind of.
You're human. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, yeah. So and as much as you can be empathetic and patient, you are human, and the 100th time in a day will wear on you, especially, layering on top of all the other daily tasks and responsibilities you have.
Yeah. It was always like, it was such a horrible interruption. And then I felt so guilty
Guilty. Oh, yeah.
for ignoring it. And I don't think I ever blocked him. I don't know if that was an option back then. I don't remember.
Well, the great thing is KindredMind doesn't get tired or get short or cranky, right? It will say the same thing. It won't say, I just told you that already. Why are you calling me again? It'll say exactly what that person needs to hear, because the knowledge base that the caregiver has set up will inform that loved one, be informed on how to navigate those calls. It's also built on validation therapy, simulated therapy, and the Alzheimer's Society of Canada's guidelines for dementia-friendly phone calls. So it has those guardrails in place, to ensure that it's not getting, agitated themselves, but rather, you're here. I hear you. You're okay. All of those reassuring words that they need to hear in that moment.
I would almost think that would help. Well, it's definitely going to help the caregiver, but I would think that it would help your loved one because they're being reassured in a nice, pleasant tone of voice a
Well,
hundred times.
that was the impetus. Like I designed this specifically to help my mom, but like a byproduct is that it, to your point and what you've raised, is that it gives the caregiver, in my case myself, moments like this to be not interrupted and to be focused.
Yeah. So we know that we can't argue with reality with people living with dementia. Validation and meeting someone where they're at is, it's the key to good caregiving. How is
Mhm.
KindredMind programmed to handle memory loss gracefully, engage in maybe reminiscence therapy, and keep
Yeah.
conversations safe, comforting, and
Yeah.
grounded?
Yeah, no, and those are the pillars we built Kindred Mind on. So you nailed it in your question for the audience. Yeah, so it goes back to the 1960s, Naomi Fail, who developed the whole validation therapy. It's still used as a clinical standard, where the emotional reality of a person with dementia is valid. And even if the facts don't line up, like even if it doesn't make sense to you, it does make sense to them. So you don't correct them, you meet the emotion. There's always something kind of driving that behavior. In this case, we're dealing with repetitive phone calls. So if my mom asks, and she has, for her mother, and my grandmother's been gone now 30 odd years, it doesn't say she's not here or lie about where she is in some elaborate way either. It goes toward the feeling. And so that's what it's designed to do. It will say something like, "Tell me what you remember about her." And it lets her sit inside a comforting memory instead of confronting a loss that she wouldn't be able to process again and again anyway all day long. And how sad would that be? So that reminiscence work, and it's one of the gentlest tools in dementia care, because the person gets to stay somewhere cozy, hoping that the memory, of course, is a nice one. And where it stays safe is the guardrails that I mentioned. It never tells you, it never tells her rather that she's confused, or hey, you have dementia, and didn't I just told you that. So yeah, it's gentle, and it will never argue. And if she describes something that sounds like real fear, and there are distress keywords that have kind of been highlighted, it no longer validates. Instead, it will move to breaking my cover for me mode and alert me, so that I can chase it down and investigate it if need be.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I have more arguments online with people who think
Oh,
it's absolutely wrong to lie to your loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia. And it's like, it, you're thinking of lying as something that's harmful. Lying to prevent them from going through the grief process again is kind. And you brought up the example of your mom was looking for your grandmother. I had a similar experience one day out of the blue. My mom said, and my mom thought I was her best friend. So
aw.
I know, I was like, hey, it's kind of an upgrade. That's how I looked at it. I'd lost a tremendous amount of weight, so I like intellectually knew if I don't hardly recognize a person in the mirror, there's absolutely no way my mom has put
Right.
this person with, I knew she didn't remember details, and then I confirmed it, and so I kind of bypassed that shock feeling of, oh my gosh, my mom forgot me, which they
Mm,
don't forget you, they just forget the role that you're called.
right.
But best friend did seem like an upgrade. But she asked me one day, she's, have you seen my parents lately? And both of my grandparents were gone. And my response was, no, actually, I haven't. But I'm sure they're, doing really well.
Yeah.
I'm not religious, but it doesn't matter what you think or believe. I don't how my grandparents were wonderful people. I can't imagine in the afterlife or whatever that they're not doing fine.
Yeah.
So there was
Yeah.
no lie. There was just an omission of I haven't seen them lately because they're dead. So it's
They
nice that
call it, there's many ways to describe this, but they call it compassionate truth, and I like that one.
I might have to use that term. What is it? I always
Yeah.
learned fiblets. What was the other thing? I forgot. There's other terms I've heard, but I like compassionate. What did you say? Compassionate truth?
Yeah, because I mean, you're saving them from grieving all over again. And if they're asking after a loved one that has passed, they could be asking that same question 50 times a day. So
Right.
they're going to go through that grieving process 50 times a day, and be confused as to why they weren't, informed earlier, or maybe at the funeral if they're starting to like think through that whole thought process. But yeah, it's I mean, there's different philosophies and different care practitioners that subscribe to different ways of handling that. But for me, my end goal for my mom is one of peace and calm. And if I can reduce the anxiety that she sits with on a baseline on a great day, if I can reduce that on any level using anything, then that serves me, and it certainly serves her well-being.
So walk us through like a typical day using KindredMind, like from morning routines, gentle medication reminders is an option, I think,
Yep.
to maybe dealing with mid-afternoon sundowning, which you're probably then also dealing with your daughter more. What walk us through how that actually sounds and feels like for somebody with memory loss.
Yeah. Okay. So when my mom calls and I can't answer, KindredMind will pick up in my voice. It's not a recording. See, that was what they put into play many, many decades ago. And actually, some care facilities are creative and they'll have like a family voice recording to ease that individual when they start getting agitated or anxious or looking for their loved one. They'll play that recording. So we've kind of like launched from that, brought it into a more modern time where it's generative, it's two-way, it's based on relevant information. So it's built on this knowledge base that I've shared. KindredMind doesn't allow for medical, last names, financial, anything that's sensitive. So it's pretty surface level, but it's enough to have a conversation that is relevant to my mom. Often she'll ask, how are the kids? So I will provide like a daily update in my notes. I have like on my app, I can just plug in something new so that if she's calling and I can't answer and she's asking after the kids, it will give her relevant information. And it knows the rhythms of her day too. It knows her mealtime. It knows that, every Friday they have live music come. So the companion actually can have a purpose-driven conversation. And if there's an anomaly where there's something that is concerning for my mom, it will know how to handle that based on the pillars that I described earlier. And it will know how to gently redirect. So I use this as an example. Once again, this occurred where her regular concerns are, when am I going to come see her? So it knows how to answer that because I've provided that to the knowledge base. But you can't provide for everything. You can't forecast what might become a concern. So one day a concern was she had misplaced her hairbrush and thought maybe someone had snagged it. And so it will, and you can read the transcripts because you get a summary after. And so it validates. So it'll say, first it answers and it says, okay, I hear you. It validates. That must be frustrating because you want to take care of your appearance before you go out into the common area and meet with your friends. I'm sure it's just misplaced. And when I come and see you today after work, I'm going to help you locate your brush. And then after really settling in on validation, it will gently redirect to, my mom always wants to know when her next meal is. So depending on the time of day, it can say, oh, it looks like in 2 hours time, you're going to be directed to the dining room. So it'll have a nice kind of closure to that. Now, to your question about sundowning, we do know that is, well, it's a thing that I've personally experienced with my mom, where there's a little bit more disorientation, maybe more anxiety. So the calls, you can have the pace adjusted. So the pace isn't, so quick. It's a lot slower so that it's more calming and so that the information can be digested easier. And it doesn't rush, and it does have, it tethers back again to something that's comforting, like, a favorite TV show could be referenced. So it's reassurance, presence, connection, and always I'll see, because I do try to visit her every day. I'll see you soon. I can't wait for our visit. You're safe. All of those kind of gentle redirects, even, well, most importantly, during the times that are a little bit more anxiety inducing.
That's I'm so wishing I had this option back when I needed it. But KindredMind gives you the choice between cloning your voice or using a warm assisting voice.
Yeah.
How would somebody decide which one, like what's the parameters for thinking through which one they would use?
Well, there's sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was thinking, are there like specific stages or scenarios where an assistant voice might be better than yours?
You nailed it. But then, the early stage of dementia and Alzheimer's, that individual might be able to pick up on subtle nuances that are a little different from the loved one's true, or the caregiver's true voice. So it's really honed in on, it's very niche. It's targeted for the mid section of the journey, so to speak. But there's also some people who elect to not have their voice cloned. So they might consider this compassionate deception as something they don't want to subscribe to. So they have the option of choosing an assistant, which is amazing, is an amazing option, because then you can introduce the assistant to your loved one and say, hey, you know what, I'm in surgery or I'm in meetings all day. I have an assistant working for me, and they're gonna keep you apprised of my availability. And so when the calls come in, they'll remind them, hey, this is Jenny, Kirsten's assistant, and she's just, chatting with Jen right now, and she won't be able to take your call for another, hour or so. But at least my mom in that moment, if she's talking to my assistant, is able to be reassured. And any questions she might have, my assistant can answer, because it's all based on this knowledge base.
That's really cool. Did you try the assistant voice with your mom?
No,
No.
she gets me every time. I think at this stage, because she's had me every time, it might be she only calls me. She doesn't call friends. She doesn't call my children. So I think introducing a new voice after this long might be disturbing. Not sure. But I think in the outset, like in the early days, had I had this then, I absolutely would have had the assistant start and then introduce me.
I would think too, it might depend a little bit on like your professional track. Like for me, I've always been an entrepreneur, so I think my mom would be surprised. Like, what do you mean she has an assistant? I think that would throw her off. Like, she can't afford. I mean, there would be like 100 judgments.
100 judgments or questions. I think even if I were to say to my mom now, I had an assistant and I lived in the Taj Mahal, I mean, it's accepted. It's not questioned.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we started out talking about people's skepticisms with AI. Hopefully, we've kind of alleviated the concerns. Well, we've given them reasons to consider using KindredMind, but what about their concerns about safety? How much control do they actually have over what it says? It sounds like is it hard to set up? Because it sounds like you got a lot of things to tell it.
No. So it's well, first of all, the loved one has no involvement in the tech at all. She's not opting into an app. It's really for the family to set up. And the tip I'd give is don't overthink the tech side. You're not configuring settings or features. You're just talking. So it's actually like a short Q&A with our virtual assistant named Sarah. And she asks questions, and you in that time of talking, it's capturing your voice, but also capturing the information to populate the knowledge base, like her routines, her history, the people that she often asks about, the concerns she might have. So it's really just through chatting, and you're the expert on that person. So it's not difficult, and the setup process just needs you to do exactly that. Just have a conversation and then review the dashboard to tweak information that you want that appears in the conversations back and forth. Another great thing too is before you even program it into your loved one's phone, you can test it at length. Like you can pretend to be both and have that conversation with yourself with your own voice clone, and kind of throw those curveballs and see how it fields all of that.
So I have one more curveball.
Okay.
One of my members in my support group, his father reverted back to his native language. Can KindredMind handle language regression, and how does that impact bilingual or immigrant families navigating care?
Yeah, we thought of that too. We actually have 14 different languages. Our goal is to go worldwide. We've got some people in the Ukraine and UK already. So that's great. So 14 languages. Our plan is to build upon that. But the reason why we did that, not because we wanted to go worldwide, is because we have read a lot of studies where people who have dementia, not only do they regress to their childhood core memories, but also sometimes revert back to their native language. And the problem with that is they can no longer converse with sometimes, well, definitely their grandchildren, but like their own children themselves. So this allows for that communication lines to stay open. So, you know, my mom isn't Greek, but let's just pretend she's Greek and reverted back to Greek. My voice will start speaking Greek to her in this voice clone because I can set the language.
That would have helped this member so much. I believe his dad reverted back to Farsi. Is
Wow.
is that one of the 14?
No,
No. Okay.
not
Well,
yet, not yet.
not yet. Okay. That was his biggest challenge, was finding any kind of care or
That's sad.
support that
Yeah.
spoke Farsi. And, I'm in California. You'd think, we're pretty diverse, but not that diverse.
Yeah.
It was a huge challenge. So how if we want to introduce this to a parent or a spouse, whoever we're caring for, I'm assuming they don't, even if they're resistant to technology, it's not going to be a problem because you're not really onboarding them. You're just onboarding yourself.
You're onboarding yourself. It's all prompting. Certainly we're here to assist if need be. But it's an 8-minute conversation that you have with our virtual assistant, and then you just follow the prompts. 30-day trial. So it's something that you don't necessarily have to commit to. If you try that conversation with yourself, you might decide you want to continue with it. It's pretty remarkable. It's pretty impressive.
It sounds fantastic. I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to give this a chance, because unless they don't have to deal with repetitive phone calls. Like,
Right.
I didn't get those from my mom, probably because my dad prevented it, which was probably exhausting for him. But even after he passed, I think she was beyond that stage, because
Yeah.
even the first 6 weeks of memory care, which were the transition period, was not fun at all. She didn't, that I'm aware of, was never reaching out, trying to like make phone calls. And that's one of my favorite stories about mom and memory care, was the day that she finally was acclimated to memory care. She was trying to help a friend make a phone call.
Aw.
And when she said, "Oh, hey, come with me, I have to help my friend." And I've told this story 1,000 times. And yes, I know everybody's, if you've listened long enough, you've heard this story 1,000 times. It was like, the heavens opened up. I had won the jumbo lottery. Here's a basket of golden retriever puppies and a bag of diamonds. I mean, it was just like, when she said friend, it was the best thing. And so I'm thinking, this woman who was so agitated, and this was like mid-afternoon, she was demanding to call her son. She needed the phone book, which made me giggle because in 2017, I wasn't even using the phone book. So it was like a little momentary giggle with that thought. And I think this would have helped her and the staff, who were getting very frustrated because she was adamant. She wasn't getting like super angry. She was just, you could tell she was frustrated. Like, I want my son on the phone and I want it now. Well, with KindredMind, they could have done that for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. We do see that agitation kind of gets contagious among the population in care homes. So that's a nice little tool to kind of quell that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way they could have set it up so that she could have called a phone number, or they could have, I'm sure. Yeah. Does it work? I'm assuming it works. Does it work with a landline?
Yep.
Okay.
My mom has a landline.
I was like, all of a sudden I just realized I haven't had a
I know those
landline.
things are part of the past, I realize, but I have a landline for my mom.
No, that makes sense. So they could have just called the number that was attached to the app, and my mom wouldn't have been fretting about helping her friend make this phone call. Is there anything I missed in that you want to tell the listeners?
No, I don't think so. Thanks so much for the questions. I think they covered a good amount for KindredMind.
Well, I wanted to be thorough because I really want people to really hear why this is a product they should consider, because you said it, I said it, we've both experienced it, just that anxiety, that I don't know, fight or flight response, like, oh my God, the phone's ringing again, I can't take it. And you just want to literally run screaming into the street.
Yes.
It's like, that's at least how I felt. It's just like, I was so grateful when my dad's phone battery died, and nobody charged it for. I think everybody was grateful. Nobody managed to charge that phone. It was just like, and I don't know if my sister still has all those plaintive, messages, but it's like I don't, because it was so
Yeah.
traumatic. Even thinking
Yes.
about it just kind of gives me oof.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I am so glad that you created this platform for people. I hope they don't let the AI newness, and I don't want to say spookiness. I know it's like it's kind of weird how, like, we don't really know how it works, and you hear good things and you hear bad things. So I hope we don't give it a try. That way you'll know if it's
Well,
for you.
technology, it's a tool. It can be used for good or bad, right? And in this case, it's doing good.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate it. And the listeners should all know KindredMind is linked in the show notes. So just scroll down, hit the hot link, and hop over there. And if we didn't answer a question, I'm sure it's on their website.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And a huge thank you to Kirsten Thomas for sharing how KindredMind is creating compassionate, innovative tools for family caregivers. You don't have to carry the weight of every missed phone call alone, and leveraging technology to protect your peace of mind isn't a compromise. It's an act of self-preservation. To learn more about KindredMind and check out the resources we discussed, head over to the show notes or click the links in the description below. And if you want a peek behind the curtain on how I use a digital assistant to help produce this show and newsletter, don't forget to check out today's companion Substack post. Until next time, take care of yourself, and I will talk to you again very soon.